So now we're gonna texture our quad, which we created in the video number 6, and at the end of the video it will look like this. So a simple textured quad. So okay, first of all I need to give the texture coordinates, which ranges from 0 to 1. So as you see, learn OpenGL.com in the texturing section. The guy who wrote this shows you on an image that images start from 0, 0 and to the upper right, which is 1, 1 coordinate. So first of all, the bottom left, which is 0, 0, 0, 0, and the bottom right, which is 0, 1, 0, 0, the upper right, which is 1.0 and 1.0, and the upper left, which is 0, 0, and 1.0, and a comma here. So these are the coordinates for the texture. I'm gonna give it texture chords, and one thing, in order to load textures you will need a module called pillow. So you need to go to the folder where you installed your virtual environment, to the scripts folder, and on Windows, shift and right click, open command window here. So I can activate my virtual environment. I'm activated it, and just type pip install pillow. Pip install pillow. I already installed it, so I'm not gonna install it again. So now I'm gonna import the pip from pill, import the image model. Yes. Okay. So before I use the program, I'm gonna create the texture. Texture, which is equals to GL gen textures, gen textures 1, and bind the texture, bind texture, GL bind texture, and GL texture 2D, yes, and texture, give it the texture. So it is almost, not almost, but it is the same, just like binding, generating the VB or the EBO. So gen textures, bind textures, like gen buffers, bind buffers. So now we're gonna create texture wrapping parameters. Texture wrapping params. So GL text parameters. GL text parameters. GL text parameters. It's okay. Or text parameter. Just not parameters, but text parameter I. So the first argument is GL texture 2D, and GL texture wrap on S, GL texture wrap and GL repeat. I'm gonna do this for the T. So these are just UV coordinates. They call it S and T. And in the Learn OpenGL book, you can read about texture wrapping, what the GL repeat, mirror repeat, clamp to edge, clamp to border edge means, and what this is GL wrap S, GL texture wrap T means. This guys explains it very well, so I recommend to read this. So now we are going to the filtering. So texture filtering parameters, params, let's say params, okay. So I'm not gonna write this out, but I'm gonna copy this line because we are using the same GL text parameter I with the GL texture 2D, but now we are set the GL texture min filter, GL texture min and filter, GL texture min filter and GL linear. Okay, so we copy this and set the mag or the magnifying filter, mag filter to GL linear. Okay, so texture filtering is very well explained in this book. That means GL nearest and GL, we are using GL linear and GL nearest. So just read this. This is the best explanation I found online. So now we're gonna load our texture. So image equals image that open, and I'm gonna open the create that JPEG, and I'm off screen. I just created an resource folder which contains create the JPEG image and a smiley.png image. So I need to go to the res and create JPEG. So image data. I'm gonna type it out and I'm gonna explain what's happening. So image data list image dot get data image dot get data and convert it to numpy dot uint8. So as we did with the vertices and the indices, we are converting to that image data or the image to a numpy uint8 format and storing it to the image data variable. So now GL text image 2D GL text image 2D. So it takes a lot of parameters. GL texture 2D. The first parameter. What is it? Texture 2D. The second parameter is, I think, something with MIP mapping, but we don't use MIP map. The format is gRGB, and the width and the height of the image, which is 512 by 512. Here we have another 0. I need to look what that 0 means in the documentation, or the type is GL unsigned byte, GL unsigned byte. So we converted it to unsigned. And the actual image data, which is here. So so what these all parameters mean are here. So the first argument specifies a texture target setting to the GL texture 2D means this operation will generate a texture on the currently bound texture object. This is this one, yes. The second argument specifies the MIP map level for which we want to create a texture for. If you want to set each MIP map, blah 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 blah, just read it. The third argument tells OpenGL in what kind of format we want to store the texture. This is RGB. The fourth and the fifth is the width and the height of the texture. The next argument should always be 0, so this is some legacy stuff. The seventh and the eighth argument specify the format and data type. Format and data type of the source image. And the last argument is the actual image data. So wanted to do next. Yes, change the vertex shader and the fragment shader. So now we will have an input vec2. Let's name it index coords or input text coordinates. So input vec2 input text coordinates, and we are going to create an output out type of vector2, and let's name it out text coords. Input text coords, out text coords, and let's set out text coords equal to the index coords. Out text coords, not text but text, equal to the input text coords, which are the input texture coordinates which will come from these values, the texture coordinates. So, and the vertex shader is okay, and in the fragment shader I'm going to create an input for the out text coords. So remember, it needs to have the same name. This is the out vector which goes to the input of the fragment shader, so it needs to have the same name. So out text coords, and we need a uniform sampler 2D. Sampler 2D sampler text. Uniform sampler 2D and sampler text, and now the output color will be texture, and the sampler text, sampler text, and the out text coords. So let me double check out. So now I'm gonna set the texture attribute location. I'm gonna just copy these 3 lines and change it to, let's say, texture coords underscore texture coord, and the attribute name is in-text coords. So I'm gonna change this and copy and change this color to texture underscore coords and this to texture underscore coords. Okay, so this has 2 values, remember, U and V on S and T, and now this was changed, so we have 6 and 8, 8 times 4, 32, and times 4 bytes. 64, 128. So now we are copying to the GPU 128 bytes of data. The element buffer is still 24 bytes, but the stride in the position is now 32 bytes. And the coordinate starts at 24 bytes. Yes, 24. At 12 starts the color, and at 24 starts the texture coordinates here in this array. So it won't work yet. I'm gonna run it, but it gives this error, this GL vertex attribute pointer, blah blah blah. It took me a while to figure it out how to solve this, and I solved it by changing these input vectors to input layout and location equals 0. So I'm gonna copy for the color and for the texture coordinates. So now 0, 1 and 2. So now we want to refer it by name, so position, color and text code. We will refer them as location, layout locations 0, 1 and 2. So I'm gonna comment this GL get attribute locations here, and instead of position and color and texture cards, I'm gonna give it, this is the position 0, this is at the position 1, and this is at the position 2. So 0, 1, 2, position, color, text code. So now it should work. And yes, it's working.